Welcome back, and this is going to be the Chris STH video. How do we take the STH out of Chris or BQ and make it usable for us, make it meaningful? So let's go ahead and get started. These are going to be the extra columns or helper columns that we're going to add to the raw data. And so let's go ahead and just copy. If you watch the status of funds videos, you'll be familiar with this. I'm going to paste special, transpose, since I already kind of went through it in the STH. I'm not going to repeat myself, as these videos tend to get a little bit long, so I'm going to try to save a little time there, but I'm adding information to make these both consistent across all of our reporting that we're doing, and to add a little bit more meaning so we can do some roll-up reports. Here we go. Go ahead and add in the object class, because we want to add the object class. We're doing an exact match because we want to make sure that we get the proper object class per the EEC. We're going to put that Pateo in, and it's going to be the one just like the one in the Chris or BQ status of funds, because if we have the BQ status of funds Pateo, then it's going to define the rest of our Pateos here. So, or it's going to be the same. We shouldn't be missing any. Sub-commodity, now we leave this up to you. In the template, you're going to have sub-commodity in there as you define it in the description tab. But if you were to want to do commodity, for example, then go right ahead. This VLOOKUP acts the same. We're just referencing column number 6. If you wanted to get the commodity, you would reference column number 3, and it's going to pull the commodity, and you can change this title here. But we use sub-commodity for our pivot tables because it's kind of the program within the program. So we're going to see execution rolled up exactly how we want. So for Chris, we're all done with the raw data. We've done this. Go back and look at the status of funds videos if you're unaware of, familiar why we added these columns. So let's go ahead and insert pivot table. We're going to do a new tab because we don't have one for our BQ STH yet, and label this BQ STH. Make it green. And we're ready to go. Okay. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to set this up just like the template. So sub-commodity is going to be first, so we can view it by commodity in our selective history. Pateo, the reason why we add Pateo like that is because we need to save a little real estate. If we were to add all of these different data elements together, or separately, I'm sorry, it would expand way to the right. So we're going to save a little real estate this way and really not lose any of those data elements. Next is going to be document number, calendar date, okay, and then DOV, and we can add a lot of things in here like DOV, and let's look at our post date, our Julian post date. Some of these things are very important for ALO, maybe not budget, but maybe ALO, and this is a report that we're looking at every single transaction, so it can be quite helpful to have all of these different data elements. So fiscal year, we're going to be pulling our reports by post date, 1 October of the current or later, so we're going to have more than one fiscal year in our selective history, so we're not missing anything. Post code, let's get type vendor in there. Where's the type vendor? There it is. And post code here. Alright, now we're done with that. And you can see this is, you may have seen these type of pivot tables before. That's awful. You're not going to get anything out of this whatsoever. So let's go ahead and clean this up like we've done in the previous videos. I'm going to go ahead and select, row headers, unselect that. Report layout, the most important part, show in tabular. Turn off my grand totals. Turn off my subtotals. It's shaping up a little bit better now. Now I can select this design that I like to see. View, take out the grid lines. Right click into here, pivot table options, display. Do not show expand and collapse buttons. I do go in here to data. For some of these, we're going to use slicers in these. So with the slicers and the pivot cache, it remembers everything from the start till whenever you're at. So let's say things aren't in your data anymore. Let's say you're not pulling FY10 anymore. It's going to remember FY10 if you kept feeding the data through it. So what I want to tell it to do is say, don't remember anything, just remember what's in the data now. So I just changed that to none instead of automatic. Alright, so in about 30 seconds we went from something that didn't mean or didn't look like anything to you to something like this. So this is much better. The next thing we do with the selective histories, we like to find, in terms of getting our dollar values in there, how do we do that? I'm looking for balance ID. I'll show you a few things with the balance ID here. See how that put it across the columns? We hadn't looked at putting anything in the columns yet, but this balance ID is showing you the stages of accounting. So right now you see how it did it alphabetically. I'm going to highlight these and look at this crosshair right here. I want to wait for that and drag it over to the left. Put them in the order. So authority here, D, I'm going to drag D over to here. F, D, F, and R, don't forget reimbursements, D, F, and R. And then J and W is my reimbursable authority. I'm going to put that right in front of here. You can change these however you like to see it. U, O, U, and E. So one more with the E, and we're good to go. Now you might be saying, there's no C, there's no commitments. What's going on here? Well, we're in a dual processing environment, and so this data is from OAC O-band 41L1, the 115th Fighter Wing. They went on to DEAMS, I believe, in mid-2014. So the commitment documents that would hit in commitment, 4009s, MIPRs, Form 9s, those are all in DEAMS. We're not going to see things hit in a commitment stage. They're going to be in obligation, unpaid, and paid. So whenever you know that, it starts to make a lot of sense. So again, dual processing environment. Whenever we know whose data we're working with, we actually would expect that to be the case. Let's find our amount and put this in here. Where are we at? Alright, here we go. It knows it's a dollar value. I select it. It puts it in values. Now we have these unformatted values. Let me show you a little trick here to help speed these formatting things up a little bit. Since this is thousands of transactions, I'm going to select a random potato, hopefully one. It's got it. There we go. So what I'm going to do, I selected one. I'm going to highlight this here. Highlight all these values to the end. Control Shift money sign. Alright, and then whenever I select here, now the rest of my dollar values are in that format. So that's what we want to see. I'm going to hide the field list. So now we're shaping up. This is about what it's going to look like in the template. We don't do out of the box on this one a subtotal for a commodity, although you could easily do that, and sometimes I certainly do. It's just that whenever you're looking at an STH, it could roll up in many different ways, and you may want to filter in many different ways. So let me show you a few other things to make it a little distinct. I'm going to zoom out a couple so that we can see all of this. One thing you may want to do, in this case, banded rows or banded columns, some people do like that distinction or like this so that we see them. It kind of breaks it apart a little bit for you. It'll come out looking like this in the template. And then the last thing is going to be slicers. Since we've got thousands and thousands of records we want to look for, we want to be looking at exactly what we want to look at instead of having to scroll and do this all day long. So let me show you how we'll do that fairly quickly and how you're going to see it out of the box. I'm inside the pivot table, analyze, insert slicers. So I'm going to select it's going to give me a list of all the column headings. So I'm going to select in here the ones that I want. So fiscal year, appropriation symbol, remember we added that. PEC code. Let me go ahead and put an ESP code in there. Budget activity, all of the things that you may want to be filtering by. Essentially, a slicer is just a fancy filter. That's all it is. EQ, RCCC, and we'll do sub-commodity, and for now we'll leave it at that. So even though you couldn't pick in here for your specific ones, we're going to put them in here for you. So I'll go ahead and give myself a little room. These slicers are right here. I'll put the first one up there as my fiscal year. Makes sense to me. Now you'll watch how I kind of format these a little bit. See this? I'm in the slicer tools. That's a lot of room for those, right? So I'm going to give it a few more columns in my slicer. I'm going to just do that right there. Maybe 2. Let's just stick with 2. Format that up to the bottom. Squeeze it in a little bit. Alright. And then right to the bottom. Now you see I've got that all lined up like I want, and what I'm going to do now, just because this is how I'll do it, I can see what the height of that is, so 1.65, and I'll mess with the width later, but I'm going to hold down the control button and select each of these individual slicers. And if I can remember, this was 1.65, and hit enter. Alright, let me go ahead and get these in the order I want them. I want symbol over here. Threw it back down there for me because there we go. And they'll come, the template will come just like this. Put the back up there and add another column for that guy. ESP code. So next, put these in whatever order makes most sense to you. Give that a few columns, since we know ESP code is always going to be just a couple digits. We can do that. Budget activity. This should be a pretty small column here, so move it over. That's good. Let's go sales code. And if you're looking at this, this is pretty much in the order that the Pateo does. That's why we do it out of the box like this. So if you were wondering, that is why. So eek, expand that out because we're going to have a lot of eeks, and give it a few columns here. Something like that. RCCC, same deal. Give that a little bit more room. Alright. And then last, that sub-commodity, like we talked about, looking at the very specific program execution, expand that out a little bit and leave it here. Now, the last thing you want to do with these slicers, because this pivot table is going to start moving, I'm going to select all of these again. Our height is good. We adjusted the width individually. Select them all. Slicer options group. I want to group that. Now you see how it put a border on the outside of everything. That means it's going to move together now. And the next thing I want to do with my slicer group is make sure I select on the very outside, right click. I think it's size and properties, and do not move or size with cells. And that's important because now that we're all set up, X out of this, say look at A7 SRM funds. So we've got 14,000 or something records here, and now what we can do is just select this, and boom, the bids are in order. We've got this SRM funded project by Pateo. Looking at our document number executed over time, we have DOVs here. That is pretty sweet. So we can do a few more little formatting things where we analyze, select entire pivot table, right click, format, border, outline. There we go. And then you can come in here and subtotal, just kind of ad hoc, just subtotal by Pateo. Maybe we want to do that. Format those cells however you want, or you can not do that, or just take that out at will and unsubtotal. But you can see now how you can go through thousands and thousands of records, start looking at key document numbers with the Pateos here. Another cool thing, we define this in our Pateo description table, right? Feeding off of this the status of funds. I selected this, and now it filters these other filters for me, and that's pretty cool. So exit out of here. How about prior fiscal years? 13. I had some things execute in FY16 that happened in 13. Remember, this is the entire FY16 data for the 1/15th. So I can come in here and look at this and see that execution, see what happened. So that is a pretty awesome thing. We get it set up, you put the work in on the front end, and all of a sudden you're getting all these things at a touch here. One of these utilities, let me check out my utilities. I've got a few fiscal years here. See, it's showing me 4 and 5. Let me see 4. Getting right down, drilling down through thousands and thousands of records in no time. So that's going to be the end of this video. Next, we're going to dive into the general ledger and try to create the same thing we see here, but the way that the DEAMS general ledger has that output. See you then.